Welcome to State of Tech, Synechron's innovation podcast. Synechron is a leading global digital transformation consulting firm focused on financial services and big technology organizations. Our State of Tech podcast hosts subject matter experts and business leaders as they explore emerging technologies, industry insights, innovation trends, and more. Let's dive into today's episode.
Welcome to the latest edition of Synechron's State of Tech podcast series, where we ignite conversations that matter. I'm Jitske de Bruijne, your host for today, and we're zooming in on a crucial topic in the financial sector, the role of AI in ensuring robust compliance and regulatory adherence. We'll explore how this technology is shaping the future of regulatory strategies and practice.
Joining us is Andrew O'Connor. He's leading our regulatory change and compliance practice. He has 50 years experience in financial services, spanning risk, compliance, supervisory, and consulting roles. Andrew brings a wealth of expertise. His experience also includes working as a prudential supervisor at the Central Bank of Ireland and leading top-tier consulting projects in regulatory implementations and strategic projects to enhance regulatory controls. Andrew, great to have you here.
Thank you, Jitske. Really happy to be here.
So, Andrew, Synechron developed a set of risk tech accelerators focusing on risk. And you've been working on the regulatory implementation accelerator from that perspective. And I'm very curious if you can tell a bit more about that and also on why risk is such an important component in your area of expertise.
Yes, a good question, Jitske. To take the second question first, why is risk important in the context of regulatory implementations? The financial services sector is heavily regulated, and the sheer volume of new regulations that are issued by regulators that financial institutions must adhere to, since the financial crisis in particular, has really ramped up, and there's no real sign that it's going to decrease. So we are in a space where financial institutions are always changing or building new processes to adhere to regulations. For example, there's new regulations coming now in the areas of sustainable finance, digital currencies, operation resilience. There's no real end to it. Financial companies are changing to a certain extent to become seen as technology companies. So then the profile changes. So the regulators also want to get comfort that the various risks there are being managed effectively and correctly. So in the context of that, banks and financial companies have a huge enterprise of work to implement new regulations. And typically with bigger institutions, we see this being carried out in the form of projects, large programs. And these programs then are managed as projects. So they have a lot of project risk. The risk that the implementation doesn't occur on time or is ineffective or inefficient, costs too much, or actually in the end it's not effective and it doesn't adhere to the regulations. And that triggers a separate risk of compliance risk that then you have to manage your adherence to the regulations and engage with the regulator. But the primary risk in the first instance, it is a project management risk. There's huge scales of money involved here, huge scales of people involved here, building systems, building teams, data flows, understanding what the regulations mean. And there's so many areas where mistakes can be made, where the incorrect steps take place. So that's all sources of risk. That's basically the key focus really that we see, or at least a key focus we see where risk plays a key role in ensuring implementations are completed in an effective way.
Okay, but now it sounds like more risk in project management as such and not as much as complying to regulations. I can imagine that you focus more on the risk of not being compliant to regulatory requirements from supervisors, looking at the projects that you are involved in.
Yes, a good question. The compliance unit is ultimately responsible for ensuring or facilitating that an institution adheres to all the regulations. And for most institutions, they try to have quite mature compliance functions. Where they lack expertise and where they typically need support from us is in trying to understand how they adhere to the latest regulations that are coming out now, trying to have that skill set of multidisciplinary teams who understand the latest challenges and are flexible to implement regulations that are really complex, that could involve requirements from various units across the business, various different geographically based units. So we work primarily on regulatory implementations because this is really where the real pain points are for our clients. You could classify it as project management in the sense because it is a project, but ultimately it is regulatory implementations really are one of the most strategic areas of projects within financial institutions. They get the most focus from the management teams and the boards because they have no real appetite for getting this wrong. So they really deserve to be called out as a special form of project that really deserves a special focus and a lot of priority to make these projects more efficient and also to reduce the costs because of the priority and the risk appetite being so low and the money that is spent on these is huge, really astronomical and huge.
Thanks for that. That gives a good insight, I think, in what's the challenges that the banks and financial institutions are facing on this topic. I heard you also worked on an accelerator in this field. Can you explain a bit more about how that one is helping financial services and what you did exactly?
Yeah, it's a good question. We built an AI-powered regulatory implementation tool, and it's a prototype tool that we built in our accelerator program. So we build it to showcase to our clients that we have capability to help them with technically building things and also having the knowledge of the cutting edge pain points that they're facing. And then sometimes we will build out for our clients if they're interested, and then they can own it and maintain it themselves. This tool that we built, we tried to think, where is the pain? Given that regulatory implementations are so strategically important for financial institutions, they cost so much money, they have such scale, there's no sign of this changing. How can we make this process more efficient? Because that's the pain point we see. So an implementation can take 1 or 2 years or maybe more depending on the scale of it. But with our tool, we've built a process whereby using AI, we can upload a new regulatory text to the tool. And by feeding the tool with a series of prompts and filters to make the content and the output bespoke to the particular profile of a client, we can generate from that business requirement, because the regulation is abstract to each particular bank. It's the same one for every bank. So how do you translate that to business requirements for your particular institution? And how do you translate that then also? So what are those requirements? And if you wanted to give a junior colleague the task of implementing these requirements, how would they do that? So the tool can generate a series of Jira tasks or Kanban board tasks or just general list of tasks that this is how you would complete the task to complete this particular requirement. And it can generate project plans. So it allows us to really make the process of implementing a regulation much more efficient. Up until now, you would probably have to have workshops with people from compliance, from the product teams, from the risk team, from the various different teams and stakeholders that will play a role in the particular implementation. But the tool now is so clever because it uses the latest AI to actually generate output that's 90 to 95% really accurate. So then if you would go from starting with a regulatory text and you want to translate that to, well, what does that mean for our institution? Which products are in scope? Okay. And now you want to build some IT system or IT flow. You need to translate those requirements into some kind of functional requirements for the IT team. So there's multiple layers of requirements gathering and back and forth and this kind of process. And ultimately, the very final step is that somebody builds some IT code. But that bit is actually really quite final. Gathering the requirements, refining the requirements is a huge, significant task in the context of an implementation. And this tool shortcuts all of that really, really dramatically with really high output from our testing.
It sounds like a very interesting tool for the financial services, but that's something that you say. Did you already pitch this to clients in the financial services and how did they react?
Yes, we have actually. In our office, we have worked with clients, leading banks in the Netherlands, for example, and we've worked with them before to help them build out leading regulatory tooling in this area. And now we are in conversations with multiple really top tier banks and financial institutions within the Netherlands, and they're really enthusiastic because they recognize the value of the tool, because generative AI, for example, is quite a new thing. So all the established providers of RegTech type tooling are scrambling essentially like everybody else to figure out how can we utilize this in our existing products and how can we build new products to service clients taking account of this technology. But we as consultants, we're on the front line. We see the pain points that clients face, and we have really strong tech capability and really strong regulatory expertise. So we're able to build prototypes really quickly. So we're quite ahead of the market. So some of the clients are really, really excited, I would say. And also it has additional processes such, for example, if you would finish the implementation, you might need to build a new policy, draft a new policy, or amend an existing policy to take account of new responsibilities and requirements. So the tool can also generate these artifacts also. So it's really, really powerful tool actually to make implementations and the associated processes more efficient.
Okay, well, it sounds really interesting. As the discussion on AI continues to evolve, particularly around its ethical and societal implications, I'm curious, from your perspective, what future trends and changes do you foresee in the way of risk areas for the global financial services industry?
I think if I think of what we're talking about here, our tool uses OpenAI and Azure OpenAI to harness generative AI, large language models and natural language processing. And I think the future is more of the same with that, using these tools and these techniques more and more, embedding those things more and more within financial companies. And I think that's going to generate a lot of value, I think, for financial companies and reduce a lot of risk for financial companies. So in the risk control sphere within financial companies, these technologies can be used now to connect compliance policies with regulations, compliance policies with procedures, with risk controls, with internal audit findings. The entire world of risk and controls can be connected in a really clever way. And then you can use big data to really generate real business value for these businesses. For example, where there are concentration risks, where there are duplications of controls, where there's inefficiencies in controls. And I think also in terms of system data processes, in terms of building code, writing code and generating new processes, this can also help there, I think. So it'll really help quite a lot. In terms of ethical and societal concerns, I think in this kind of domain, it's quite a safe environment. There's not really much personal data or personal individuals involved. I think in other areas within institutions, it can be a bit trickier. I think, for example, in the areas like anti-money laundering, you need to assess individual people, I think. When you have individual consumers involved, then I think that's where it triggers maybe challenges to make sure that we also balance what we're doing with respecting the rights of individuals also.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Your insights have been truly invaluable, highlighting how AI is positively impacting the industry, giving a bit of an example on what you've seen and still are seeing in the industry, and also the need for continuous adaptation and learning on new technologies like AI. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jitske. It was really nice to talk to you.
Thanks for listening to the Synechron State of Tech podcast. Don't forget to like and share this episode, and subscribe to stay up to date on all of the latest and innovative technologies savvy businesses need to know about. To learn more about Synechron, head to our website at www.synechron.com. Stay tuned.